It's the other one, honey.
You and John go get in the bathtub.
That was a scene from the HBO series Barry. The show details the life of an Afghanistan combat veteran, Barry Berkman, who, once out of the service, is influenced into becoming a gun for hire by a family friend and father figure. Being out of the service, the job offers Barry a purpose, but depressed with life, disillusioned with his work, and deprived of much human contact, Barry seeks a way out. A job in LA brings him into an acting class, where he discovers a love for the craft and decides it could be his new purpose. In the class is aspiring actor Sally Reed, who Barry develops affection for. He often daydreams of a future with Sally, where they live out the American dream and having the perfect nuclear family together. While trying to reach his new goal of becoming an actor, Barry has to balance his new life with his old, but eventually worlds collide and both fall apart. His work catches up to him, and he ends up imprisoned, mentally at his lowest, experiencing hallucinations and increasingly sociopathic, and growing violently detached from the humanity he has spent the whole series attempting to salvage and nurture. In the chaos of an attempt on his life, he escapes, and Sally, whose career has fallen off in an unfortunate series of events, decides to run away with him. 8 years later, Barry has his dream life, but the reality is far from perfect. The previous scene is brimming with information about the household, quality of life, stubbornly remaining or painfully declining character traits that Barry and Sally have or had, and the reality of the day-to-day in their situation. Moreover, the scene is cinematically and tonally divergent, while thematically similar to earlier in the series. Thus, it makes a great candidate for analysis of its cinematic and thematic elements. After the knock, Barry slowly walks to a painting on the wall, presumably with a weapon stored behind it. However, Barry walks to the wrong painting, and Sally corrects his mistake. Barry, after 8 years on the run, has lost his proficiency as a hitman, losing his edge as he has slowly let his guard down. His forgetfulness is likely a product of not needing to use these skills, thus letting his guard down over time. Moreover, throughout the episode, Barry is shown to be living his dream, enjoying time with his son and the mellow domestic environment. Sally is shown to have a deep resentment towards the lifestyle, with a consistently bitter attitude and alcoholistic tendencies. Sally has kept her guard up. Her distaste of this lifestyle has prevented her from succumbing to the reality that she and Barry are fugitives on the run. Barry forgets where the gun is, but Sally, still on guard after all this time, remembers its location. There are two shots in the scene that portray the set and props around Barry's house in such a way that reveal some of the themes of the episode, that being Barry's continued sociopathic and violent tendencies. As the sun rises behind the house, illuminating the open landscape, Barry remains after hours of standing. In the subsequent shot, the desolate, brown, open landscape leads on for miles uninterrupted. The first shot demonstrates the remaining psychoticism in Barry, and the second supplements it. Standing in the dark after hearing the kids scuffle off is nonsensical. They likely mean no harm, and Barry's angry demeanor, gripping the firearm, with knowledge of his sociopathy leading up to his escape, leads the viewer to his intent to kill. Seeing him standing there after the sunrise takes it even further. Barry can clearly see no threat with a 360-degree view, but the persistence of his obscenely visible anger indicates that he is itching, hoping that he finds a target he can unload the clip into, as he characteristically does throughout the show. Earlier in the episode, when consoling his son after getting into a fight, he explains that he had violent thoughts in the past, but had moved past them and healed. The content of these two shots indicate that Barry has not moved past these thoughts, but has instead pushed them far down, and all it takes is the opportunity to arise to release nearly a decade of pent-up psychoticism. At the beginning of the scene, the viewer may notice that Sally still has her wig on. Earlier in the episode, Sally, a natural blonde, is seen putting on a brunette wig. The wig serves two purposes. Being an active fugitive, the wig allows a level of protection from identification in the event someone recognizes her, but more importantly, represents the actor still inside of her. Every morning she puts the wig on prior to starting her day as Emily. In wearing the wig, Sally takes up her final role as Emily. Bill Hader and Sarah Goldberg do excellent jobs of physical acting in this scene, relying upon mannerisms and behavior they have crafted to represent the roles they play. After the knock, both immediately tense up, and Sally has a look of panic and fear in her eyes, seen a few times during the series, indicating the intense panic in her mind after the knock. Barry, despite having somewhat lost his edge as a fugitive, displays a similar expression. They lock eyes, then both return to looking at the door. Then they both stand, but take polar opposite positions. As Barry immediately walks to the wall to find the gun, Sally takes a stance only seen when she feels she is in grave danger. They say little, but their body image says volumes for the tension and fear hanging heavy in the air. Sally moves to hide behind Barry, demonstrating how after 8 years she still feels safe behind him, a conclusion that was hard for her to reach after Barry was imprisoned. Later in the scene, Bill Hader portrays masterful work of acting with his eyes, an ability he uses often throughout the series to vividly portray Barry's internal thoughts and emotions. After walking out of the house, Barry is seen squinting with an ominous visage. Compared with the fearful and frightened look in his eyes immediately after the knock, Barry's temperament clearly shifts from fearful to predatory. The angered expression mushrooms after hearing the children, and the squint is supplemented with a deepening of his breathing and a clenching of his jaw. At this point, Barry is losing control, his previously calm demeanor slipping to his homicidal tendencies. Even after hours outside, this expression remains, as Barry is itching, hoping for the chance to unleash violence. The whole scene is eerily devoid of a backing track or score, which places the viewer in the situation with Barry and Sally. This contributes to and elevates the tension in the scene. Later in the scene, when Barry is walking out of the front door, nothing can be seen outside the house besides the dark. A frequent motif throughout the series is Barry entering or exiting a dark environment to signify improvement or deterioration in his goal of overcoming his violent tendencies. As Barry exits the house and goes into a violent and predatory mindset, he enters the dark, showing how after 8 years he was still ready for and easily able to fall back on his violent past. This shot continues, and by the end of it, Barry is almost completely submerged in the dark, and with it, his mindset is once again at its darkest point. The scene opens with a symmetrical shot, placing Barry and Sally on opposite sides of the living room. A couch is present in the background, but they choose to sit on distant, separate seats. This shot serves to demonstrate the drift between the two, as their emotional connection has faltered to simply one of necessity. Barry needs Sally to maintain mental stability, and Sally needs Barry for protection. But beyond that, the bond they share is a shell of what it used to be. This idea is reinforced with later shots in the scene. Following shot of Barry standing aggravated in the dark with a grimace on his face is a bird's eye view of Sally and their son cuddling in the bathtub, and after that is a cut back to Barry standing in front of the house as the sun rises. This series of shots stands to place Barry and Sally apart, with Sally and John simultaneously protected but victims of Barry in his unstable psychological state. The scene is stuffed with tension. From the moment the viewer hears a knock on the door, it builds. The pan from Barry to Sally, and back to Barry, the viewer knowing what Barry may have to do, increases the stakes and heightens the unease. Barry and Sally both move slowly from the moment the knock is heard, and these slow movements lead the viewer to anticipate a jump scare, which adds to the suspense. As Barry slowly walks out into the darkness in front of the house, the viewer can expect anything from nothing to a violent and bloody firefight. This wide range of outcomes and uncertainty compounds the tension, which ultimately builds to nothing. Despite the immediate tension of the scene faltering, the tension in the episode and plot of the show grows tremendously, as the viewer is now aware of Barry's continued unhinged and psychotic behavior, which certainly would be unleashed later in the season.